Ah, you all should just take a look at this beautiful masterpiece here. I made it and I totally loved and enjoyed the process that I used. Looks very delicious and I totally just feel like eating everything now. So I went surfing on the internet to look up some ideas that could translate what I was projecting in mind, and I found this beautiful cake design and I intend for us to decorate this together today, and I hope that I will be able to replicate it as much or as close as possible to the original design. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to also turn on your notification and just basically stay close to this family so that for every time I drop a content as this, you all will be the first to get a grip on it. So let's go and decorate. I will be working with 3 yummy cake flavors, 3 of my most favorite flavors in all of my cake flavor options, and it's actually the red velvet, the vanilla buttermilk, and as well as the chocolate cake. So I'm going to be starting the process with the red velvet cake, and that is because my chocolate cake basically is a very soft textured cake, as well as these other 2 anyways. But if you're looking at how soft it is always best if it goes all up so that it doesn't get compressed. But there are some situations whereby it can actually be at the bottom. That is if it is very solid, hard, straight out from the freezer. It's gonna actually defrost over time. But I mean, at the point when you're decorating it, it would hold up the entire cake layers. So for today, I'm going to be working with the red velvet first. So I'd also like the contrast that comes with the cream in between of the red and the black. So and that's the reason why I would start up the process with the red velvet cake layer. This is an 8 inches cake, all right, and everything is going to amount to about 8.5 inches high, yeah, because this is about 2.5 inches thereabouts, yeah. And this is the first layer. So what I do at this point is just to get off a bit of the uneven parts that might come out from the wrapping to get it leveled out, and then I place it bottom down like this, and then the face is up, and then I go ahead to just cut it up again because I typically do not like to apply cream on this part of the cake because of the fact that it's glossy and it can easily slip off. When a cake is about 3 layers, you really don't need to start doweling it. So how best do you make sure that it doesn't slip off in transit? Because this is actually a red flag. So what I do is not to lose this cake, I then turn it over, okay? So when I turn it over like this, what I end up with is the kind of the texture rather that I would prefer to spread the cream on, and that is because the cream is just going to sink right in and not just glide over it, and should in case there isn't any very cool temperature, you stand the risk of having a slide up. And this is just a 3-layer cake. You really don't have any reasons to have a 3-layered cake slipping off or getting messed up in transit. When I'm done doing that, you see, it's as leveled as it can get. So I'll just simply add up some cream. Fun fact is, about 98% of my cakes always have fillings like this. Now I have a wide range of filling options that is subject to what I send out to you, and then you always have the chance to pick your options. And for today, this is a lotus cream filling, and I'm going to be adding some bits of crushed white chocolate over it. And of course, I'm going to be just adding an extra vibe with some cookies, so you have a very interesting mix in there. So what I just do is pat it to get it incorporated. When I do this, what I try to do is so it can sink into the wet cream, or rather into the smooth filling, and then it can have like a single texture. All right, so when you cut through the cake, you're not going to be seeing the smooth filling separately and the crushed filling separately. It's all going to marry together as one. So, and then of course I would go in with a clean sweep of the cream, just a little bit, so that it can fasten the second layer to the first layer. So Rather than having the cake directly seated on the cream, on the filling, sorry, what I just do is to add the little cream so that it's more like I just give it a better binding effect. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So I'm down here trying to level it out, and anytime I'm layering my cakes, there's something I always do. I always try to eyeball to make sure that, you know, sometimes or oftentimes you have a part that is a bit higher. So rather than chopping everything off, I just always make sure that the lower part, you know, sits down, and then the next part that's going to sit on the lower part is going to be the higher part of the second layer. So there's like a balance, it's like a gravity balance. So this side for me looks a bit higher, all right, and so this looks lower, yeah. So I'm going to be turning this here because this invariably is higher. So I'm going to be putting the higher part against the lower side, or the lower layer side, sorry, so that automatically when you just drop it on it, it's balanced out. I hope you all understand that. So that also helps very much, pretty much, to avoid you know, cutting up that bulky side that is a bit high. You don't have to do that. Just make sure that the second part, you know, just evens it out. So that's where we are now. I'm going in with the second cream, and there's something I always do when I'm stacking on my cake. Sometimes I allow my whipped cream to soften out. The originally stable whipped cream gets softened out, and that is because of the presence of the fillings in it. I always prefer when the cream is, you know, a bit soft, so that by the time I add the cream, it's easy to blend it all in and it just doesn't look so different. So I'm going to be adding some chocolate cream here, already also made out of whipped cream, but with some extra special ingredients. Maybe I'll drop a recipe on this very soon also. Maybe, just stay close to this channel, and you all wouldn't even believe what I will be releasing to you also. At this point now, I will now go ahead to add up, you know, the leftover, no, rather, let me just add up some chopped chocolates. All right, some chopped chocolates. So you can imagine cutting through this cake. This is just an 8 inches 3 layers cake, guys, but it is loaded. This is loaded. Despite how anything is, we don't always try to compromise on standard. So I still go ahead to add up more. So we have, so when you cut through the cake, the layers are very chunky and very rich. That's what we're doing here. I basically just added the remaining because I didn't want to have any left over. And let me just seal it up with the dark chocolate again rather than the white. For no particular reason, I just want to do that. Maybe because the next layer that is going on is chocolate cake, and of course it's going to blend perfectly. So that's it right here. So this is the last layer now, and this is where it gets to that you need to hear me. Now, whenever I'm working with my cake, the last layer never goes bottom down. It goes up. It goes face down into the cake. Why do I do that? The reason why I do that is, for me, basically, over the years, I've been very big on sharp edges on cakes. Regardless of the design that I end up with, I always believe that when you have, you know, your cake canvas already looking very clean with the edges sharp and well defined, you know, it gives it an extra look of perfection. It gives it an extra professional look, and it doesn't look hurried or look too rushed, or it doesn't look like it's not done nicely. So because of that, it's almost impossible for you to achieve sharp edges when you work with a face down part of the cake. So that is why I work with a face down, but when I get to the top cake, no matter the amount of layers I work with, I then decide to turn it face down. In turning it face down, you all know that the edges are more out, and then it's easier to get a grip on sharp edges rather than the slopey side, which is the, you know, the other side of the cake. And that's it right there. So as always, this is one thing I always do with my cakes. I'm going to be filling up all these patches with the cakes that I trimmed out from the surface, so that they don't go to waste, and so that, the fillings don't gush out, secondly, and also so that when I trim the cake, I won't get too particular about trimming it too small, because I'm trying to make sure the edges are even. So what I do is make sure that I hold everything in place as much as possible. All right, and that's what I'm just trying to do here. It's gonna look a bit rough initially, but by the time I'm done with my trimming, you will see that the difference is very clear. And after trimming the cake, you all will see that it's even a lot better to follow this approach of, you know, cutting it up and trimming, rather than just working with your cakes untrimmed. Because in as much as you're trying to make sure that your cake is not getting wasted, you want to make sure that your cake look very appealing, you know, whilst you're working on it. Because me, I always believe that if your cake is not looking attractive, I might not even be interested in tasting. Okay, so I feel like it's the look first, and when you get a hang on your look. And for me, I feel like if you don't trim your cake by the side, you end up using too much cream around the sides of the cake, and I personally do not like to work with so much cream, whether in the layers or whether around the sides of the cake, because I always prefer that the client gets a maximum experience eating the cake, and not just so much cream, and that would probably get rid of that experience, that original experience that comes with eating a cake. And so for me, since I do not like to use so much cream that comes with working with cakes that are not trimmed around the sides, I just rather trim my cake so that I don't have to use the cream to hide any bulges or any flaws, you know, that would want to shoot out if I use just a little cream. You can see the difference. Like, just take a look at the difference. I'm not even done trimming, but look at the side that I trimmed and look at the side I haven't trimmed. Now take a look at it and see clearly that it looks a whole lot better trimmed, looks a whole lot better, looks well defined, and of course looks more professionally done than if I leave it like this. So if I choose to leave it like this, you know, for whatever reason, which is not even typical of my style, if I decide to leave it like this, what is going to happen is I'm going to have to use almost double the size of the cream I would use normally around the sides, so that it would you know, gain enough momentum around the sides and cover up all this kind of bulges that you can see even in the video. So that's the reason why it's a personal thing, it's a preference thing. There are no rules to these things, but I mean, I thought it's nice to tell you what I think or why I adopt a particular decorating style. If you do not like to trim your cakes, trust me, you can stick to your style. But if you haven't tried to trim a cake before, you might want to try it once. I mean, so that you can see what, you know, differences it will give your cake. I wouldn't say you should trim the cake and make it too small. Definitely, I'm not doing that in this video. I'm just evening it out and giving it clean, defined sides. And of course, I'm making sure that they have straight sides, right? Because when you have your cake having straight sides, it really helps to have a very beautiful design at the end of the day. All right, so that's where we are now. I'm just going to go quickly to try and do this very quickly. After I'm done with the sides, I'll move up to the top to just even it out, and then of course I'll be popping this back into the freezer for about 30 minutes to 1 hour. I mean, I think I've said this before, but I can say it again, that the taller your cake, the longer the chill time will be. But this is just a 3 layers cake, so really I don't expect it to sit in the freezer for longer than 30 minutes. Do you get me? Because it's not tall, it's just a big basic size. It's just that I cannot take away that part of my decorating. But know that for this kind of cake height, I can still go ahead to just do the first coating and the second coating all at the same time. All right, because it's not so tall, so it doesn't need so much to keep the structure in place, especially when you have actually stacked it nicely and it's balanced. So when it's balanced, if it's a quick cake, so I don't want to be a preacher of just crumb coating your cakes all the time. You should crumb coat your cakes, because when you crumb coat your cakes, it gives you a better result. But at a point when you cannot crumb coat your cake, maybe you have a quick order, or, well, I don't want to say budget cake, a quick order, because it's not all quick cakes that are budget cakes. It could be a well-paid cake, a well-paying cake, or a cake that was well paid for, but it's a last minute order and you really want to come through for your clients. Yeah, you can go ahead to not crumb coat your cake, because you know that when you don't crumb coat your cake, you save yourself the extra 30 minutes or 1 hour that you have to wait for it to get firmed up. All right, but in doing that, you have to be an expert, because if you're not careful, you're going to end up with a mess with so much cake crumbs, especially if you trim the cake, you know, flying all about the whole place. But if you don't trim the sides at all, maybe you can just go ahead, but you might end up with a bulge side. So you can pick whichever one you find most convenient, most comfortable, and easier for you. For me, this is my style. I've used this style in 14 years or more, and it's never failed me. I can't even remember if I've had any cake casualties with my cream cakes. I don't think so. If at all any, maybe in my early days of decorating cakes, probably. I'm just thinking, because right now as I'm teaching this, I can't even remember if I've had any cake casualty in recent times. I can't, because yeah, I know how I handle all my cakes at least 85%. I know how they go out. I always get feedback, and I can't remember anybody giving me any negative feedback. So that said, you all know what I'm talking about. Just trying to make small talks. So now we're done with the trimming of the cake, and we're going on with the crumb coating. So the crumb coating is just basically to just seal in all of these crumbs. As I said earlier, it seals in all of these crumbs and it helps it to stay in shape, so that all the crumbs here don't get in the way of the final coating. So at this point, I'm just trying to comb it with my scraper so that it would take out every excess, and of course to smoothen it. You can see that it's a lot different from when I had not combed it. I'm doing that so that basically to smoothen it out and to reduce the cream around the body, so that it can dry up or get chilled and get easier to handle in a shorter time. So now I'll get out the excess on the edges. All right here, something like that, like this. Get it out. All right, yeah. And think we're okay. So at this point, I will be picking the front part of my cake, considering my angles and considering what I feel like is the finest part of this cake. From the look of things, because of the design I'm going to be working with, I will be moving backward a bit. This is going to be the front part of my cake, so I'll be moving it backward a little bit like this. So at the end of the day, you will see that the back side has lesser space than the front side, and that is because of the design I'm going to come up with, because I need more space, you know, to project that particular design so that it can come out looking very much as what I want it to look like. So this right here is already a good sign, because of course the part that is bigger is automatically the front. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it now, and then just clean off the excess on the board so that I can throw this into the freezer for a few minutes, or rather I can pop this into the freezer for a few minutes, 30 minutes at the minimum for this cake. If it's a tall cake, 1 hour at the minimum, but if it's a cake that's 3 layers, 2 layers, 30 minutes at the minimum. All right, so it goes into the freezer, and then I'll be back to show you all the final decoration. Together we'll glaze the donuts together and do everything together so that you all can learn how I'm going to do it. Okay, so now it's been over 30 minutes like I said, and we're now covering the cake the second time. Take a look at those yummy donuts that will be going on the cake. And so basically just trying to apply and spread. See what I'm doing. I'll take some and then I'll spread it out. I'd always make sure to finish a part before moving to the next part. I don't just like go all the way around. So once I'm done with this side, I then move to the next side in like a sequence, so that at least you can gain control of how you're covering the cake. So at this point, all I'm doing is just, you all can see that as I'm spreading it, I'm not pressing into the cake, so I'm not poking the sides of the cake. I'm just applying and then I'm spreading it out. So if you can tell from my hand, I'm not even holding the palette knife too tightly. See? Always make sure that the bottom side of your palette knife always touches the bottom. So that when you're spreading on it, you can see that. So you just keep going. So that you don't have parts of the cake bottom side, some jumping up and some not well covered. We're just almost done now. Yeah. I hope you all are still with me. If you are still watching me, just let me know in the comments by typing donuts. Yeah, donuts. If I see that, I will know that you all are following me and you are learning. So I'm almost done covering the cake now. Remember I told you earlier that the major part of a cake decoration, to get it right, is the structure. You can see how many minutes it took me to just cover this cake now. I'm not even sure it's up to 5 minutes. But when it comes to layering and trimming, that's where it gets a little bit painstaking. But with constant practice, you know that it will only get better. You will get faster at it. So even if you see me working on it right now and it feels like I'm moving too fast or I'm moving too fast, it's because I've mastered it over the years and I'm able to work on it in literally minutes to still achieve something good enough. And always make sure that when you cover your cake, always make sure to add like an overlap at the edges for the cream, so that when you are combing the cake with the scraper, they just automatically push up, and then it's easy for you to have better edges that way. When you have the edges, so by the time you just go over it, you just have better edges and it's easier for it. If you decide to have sharp edges, this is a good way to make sure you have sharp edges. And for this cake, I'm not even going to have sharp edges because I'm going to be dripping. I'm going to be pouring chocolates over it from the center all the way to the side. So the edges might not be very significant here, but for the purpose of other times when you need to decorate a cake and you're very big on the edges, make sure that you have your edges like this, just the way it looks now, overlapped, so that it's easy for you to just sweep it out and get your edges. So that's what we have. So now at this point, I'm done covering the cake. By the time I'm combing around the sides of the cake, if I see any indentations or any gaps, then I'll fill them up just very quickly. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to be using this particular scraper. It's a stainless steel scraper to get the sides smooth as possible, right? So I'm just going to get a good control of it like this, and then I just simply give it a clean sweep Remember I told you that if I have any indentations, rather than just keep going and going, I will just take some more cream and fill up those places just like this, right? Like this, so that by the next time I'm going over it, it will just be smooth. Yes, something like that, like this. So I will just hopefully go over it one more time. I'm trying to clean it now because, well, it's clean again, so I'm going over it one more time, hopefully one more time. All right, and that's it, guys. It looks smooth enough, but I am not stopping there. I will then go ahead to get the edges, I mean, even if not sharp, but they will be cleaned out. So I always go from behind. So I start like this. So for every sweep, I clean off the excess on a towel, and then I continue from that same spot I stopped. I remove the excess and then clean it to give me another clean palette knife. I go again. So I just keep repeating that process till I get right back to the spot where I started. Like this, yeah. Keep like this. Right. Like this. Right. And like this. Okay, so after this, did you think I was done? Nah. This is where it gets interesting. So now I'm done with my canvas now. So I'm going to take just a bit of this softened sprinkles, this one right here. I would go ahead to splash it all over the cake. Okay, something like this. I most deliberately picked the softened one. If you notice that I divided it into two, I have the softened one and I have the original type. So the softened one would blend in, or rather melt in more easily into the cake sides. Okay, so the idea is to have this all blending in. I deliberately didn't want to mix this into the cream from the beginning, just because I wasn't able to determine how much I would need to give it the effect I want. So I just decided that I will just cover the cake first, add the sprinkles afterwards, and then comb it one more time. So that's what I'm going to do now. So before I comb it now, I'm just going to try and blend it in. See that? Just blend it in no particular, because I'm going to scrape it anyways. So all this has to show. Let me add more. Just add more. So I just keep going. See, so the idea is for it to show just like faintly. So then the next thing I'm going to be doing now is to pour the dark chocolate. Now before I do that, I will try and glaze the donuts first so that they can start setting before I knead them very shortly. So I'm going to be using white chocolate, real white chocolate, as well as the dark chocolate to coat the ring donuts. Just going to pour this into a flatter place so that it's easier to get control of it. And then I'll also do that with the dark chocolate. I already mixed it and melted it behind camera. So something like this, yeah. So I'm going to be saving this for the glaze over the cake. I'm going to be saving this for the glaze over the cake. So all you need to do is just to get your donuts like this. This is the chocolate. Just give it a quick dunk like this. Alright, see that? And then you just drop it carefully. That's why I have to do it ahead of time, so it can set before I need it. You can even pop this into the fridge very briefly if you're in a hurry, so that you can make sure to get all the edges correctly. So if you're in a hurry, you can easily just pop this into the fridge so it can set faster than waiting. So it's not typically designed to be also, you know, it's just supposed to see that. So that right there is how to place donuts. And don't forget not to get carried away, because once you glaze it, it gets dried up pretty fast. So you want to pour your sprinkles over it almost immediately you glaze it. But I feel like this is still fine. So let me go ahead to just try it with the white chocolate like this. Another dunk. Right. Yeah, that's it. Then you drop it and allow it to set. Another one. I'm just going to do this till I'm done with all the donuts. Just do this in no particular order. Make sure to start on time so that your donuts don't get dried up with the glaze before you apply the sprinkles, so that everything doesn't just start falling out. So this is the perfect time to do that. Keep going. Okay, so what I have remaining is going to be for the cake. So I'm going to be popping this into the fridge just for a few minutes, because you know it's chocolate, right? So it gets really dried up pretty much fast. So at this point now, I'm done glazing my donuts, and I can tell you can see how so pretty they look. At this point, this is the dark chocolate already melted. I'm just going to go ahead to pour this over the surface of the cake, and then it's going to run around the sides of the cake. Whenever you're making this kind of design, you always need to have a little extra so that you don't get stranded halfway. You know it's chocolate, and if it doesn't get coated first time, if you're trying to apply it the second time, it's going to look not as nice. So now I'm just going to go now from the center. I'll just pour. So I think I have enough now, so I'd prefer to use this so it gets distributed before it hardens. So you see, but ensure not to pour it too much so it doesn't pour too much. Try and make it how do I explain it? Let it just drop gently, but make sure to work fast, because by the time you don't work fast, once it starts setting, you start seeing the imprint of the spoon or whatever instrument you're using to apply the drips. Then it makes it look not as flawless as you would have wanted it to look. So you can always look at it and decide if the drips is enough for me. So I just keep going like this because I want it to be more. Yeah, so I just do this. See, that's the reason why it's very important to pour enough. So you can actually still drop on the board, but make sure that it's just a single pouring. Otherwise, it might not look just as appealing as you intend it to be. Yeah, so that's it.